you had a register and you looked at all the good things and all the bad things, there's no bloody way you become a gang member. I mean, my life would be much easier if I'd never been a gang member. And, I mean, you just carry all the sins of the world with you, really.
Back home, the mongrel mob and the Black Power gang are warring again in South
Jailing
Auckland.
of white power gang members involved in a
3
shooting.
members of the Road Knights gang were shot in the main street.
Police claim a reign of terror is being
Police
orchestrated.
attacked as gang party in Wellington gets out of control.
Gangs. Fierce-looking characters with tats. Motorbikes. Images of confrontation. Nothing seems to raise the collective hackles more than these groups. Whether it's Black Power, the mongrel mob, the white bikers of Timaru, or the rusters of Ruatoria. The scum of society, or rebels with a cause. The debate continues. One man who's experienced the gang scene from both sides is former social worker and senior civil servant Dennis O'Reilly. He's a patched member of Wellington's Black Power. This film presents O'Reilly's view of that scene and that of his friends. But his early years in Timaru pointed to a very different future.
My dad had a service station, a large Catholic family, and a pretty safe and secure environment in which we were right. You could always go to confession and you'd be sweet. And everyone looked like us. I mean, they were Pākehā and the horizons weren't very broad. And that was a pretty good, you know, like a pretty safe environment to grow up in anyway.
The environment in the 50s and 60s may have been very conservative, but it was also a time of economic growth. Everybody had a job. And it was also a period of massive migration, as thousands of rural Māori came to the city seeking a new life and better opportunities.
What was available for our older brothers and sisters were Māori hostels, and they were able to come through the Māori program, doing a trade training program. Now the government in that time dispersed of all that, saying there was no need for it. So we had to get into a communal whānau environment in the cities to actually make things happen for ourselves.
O'Reilly was on the move too, but to a very different location. He came north to train for the priesthood at a seminary near Napier.
You don't have to pay rent. You don't have to deal with the missus or anything. I mean, you don't have sort of great relationships or, you know, anything. It's all pretty dry and arid. But I'm afraid I'm made of more carnal sorts of construction. I mean, I'm not cut out to be a priest, mate. Let's face it. Let's face it. And I mean, both they and we came to the same frontier of knowledge at the same time, mate.
O'Reilly came to Wellington, and while pumping gas in Newtown, he came into contact with groups of young Māori. These were the early days of Black Power and other groups.
Here was this open, friendly, non-judgmental society that was an absolute opposite to what I'd always imagined, believed, seen, read, and all that sort of stuff. I mean, I used to read about these dudes in the paper, and I didn't want to know nothing about them, you know. But this wasn't what I saw, you know. Well, I mean, you see people who care for each other, whose lot isn't all that very good, who get ripped off and abused and stuffed around with inferior housing, an inferior deal by the state, and yet who are just full of aroha. If they've got it, it's yours. You know, you're part of the thing.
O'Reilly's quick tongue was soon put to good use as the country's first detached youth worker.
And it was almost like, in a way, accepted that you'd go off and do these good works for a while, and then you'd get settled down and do something real, you know, take it back off them again, you know. And so I was into that sort of mode, and then it just got a bit fast, really, I suppose.
The gang scene was heating up, and O'Reilly's friendship and loyalties were soon put to the test. He was invited to join Black Power.
After a hung at our place, some of the guys had been going home and these other dudes attacked them, and, you know, I was fit and young and eager for a fight and all that sort of stuff, and it was just a question of suddenly you're either in it or you're not, and I was in it, and somehow, somewhere along the line, I ended up being asked to patch and became a patch member, and that was about that, really. During the day, you get pissed or something, right? And you'd party up all night until early hours of the morning or whatever, and then you go to bed, which meant that you woke up at, say, 11, which meant that you'd missed that same cycle, you know. And then, of course, the same thing happened, but you hadn't done anything, right? So you've got no, like, the energy hasn't been let off, nor have you got a sense of achievement. So then that would turn into sort of, by 10, 11 o'clock at night, full of booze again, that would turn into a bit of mischief or violence or whatever, you know, and that was the sequence. So every night we'd all pour down to central Wellington, there'd be bloody fights and troubles, and I mean, it was just a saga. It was great. It was great. The best show in town. Better than videos. Well, it was just so damn exciting, you know. You'd go out there, you know, it was all on. It was all on in the street, you know, and there'd be chases and fights and, it's very exciting. Wars and all that, you know.
Who were you chasing?
Well, whoever, the enemy, I mean, the oppo, whoever it was at the time. Often there are intervening things where people allow those, sometimes, in men anyway, that warrior sort of time, which has been dealt to through wars. And so our granddads and our dads and whatever got a cop at it in the First World War or the Second World War, and a lot of that stuff was let off, you know. I mean, they, you know, went mayhem in the bloody desert or wherever, and that was sort of allowed, you know, in times of war in Italy and all that sort of stuff. And you hear some of these stories these old fellas tell, and you think, you know, that's analogous with a story you might hear at the clubhouse in some ways. And that whole war thing it's the best show in town. I mean, you know, like a gang war, a city gang war, is full on. It's total. The adrenaline rush is high. It's literally life and death. And if you've got nothing else going down, I mean, that has got to be the most interesting thing that's going.
The bar was always open, so the guys were always under the influence of alcohol at any time of the day or evening. And from then, it led to crime down the street. You know, we're picking up money down the street because we were unemployed, so we had to survive somehow.
We used to have these runs, you know what I mean? You'd all go to Taupo, and everyone would get pissed. And, you know, there'd invariably be a rapes, you know, and some reported, most not. There'd be heaps of bergs, there'd be fights. I mean, it'd be just, you know, it'd be a pain in the ass for everyone, really. Shopkeepers would rob, you know, I mean, it would just be, the local coppers would freak out. Sometimes they'd overreact, you know, because they were scared and all that sort of stuff themselves, and, you know, it wasn't a good scene. And you spend half the damn time down at the courthouse, supporting people on the dock and, you know, in and out and all this sort of stuff. People had ill health, you know, you'd get your hands cut in a fight or something like this, and people wouldn't get them tended to, and they're going to be arthritic now, and, you know, and blood poisonings and venereal diseases and chest complaints and bloody, you know, crook ears. You know, the number of people who are deaf, you know, runny ears, glue ear or whatever, they, you know, at age 18, 19 and stuff like that, you know. People had piss problems and all that sort of stuff.
Did that bother you at the time?
Yeah, man, it used to bother me. Yeah, it used to bother me. Why was it so? It was totally unnecessary.
The spiral of self-destruction couldn't continue, and in 1977, Black Power shifted their annual convention to a marae near Whakatane.
A very natural, deep, instinctive, political sort of consciousness sort of started to come to the fore. The running of wānanga, when we started to have wānanga. You know, no booze, no drugs. During the time of the wānanga, and we would bring in speakers and stay on a marae and get up early in the morning and go for exercise and have learning programs at night, and karakia and haka and waiata. Massive, massive stuff. I think Ray and that getting arrested for rape was another big issue, you know, and not so much being arrested for rape, because I mean that was common. I mean that was how we did things. Eh? I mean a woman just did not get a good run, but that was at a time when we were starting to get really organised, and we were able to debate these things, you know, and we had control of ourselves to the degree that these concepts could come on board, you know, and there were some brave young women out there who said, hey, this is shit. We're your women, we're your wives, we're the mothers of your children. You're going to treat us like this, you know?
But internal changes in Black Power weren't about to dispel public fears about gangs in general. Rape was on the increase. Intergang warfare was on the rise. There were deaths. And in the north, policemen were being outnumbered and attacked. Prime Minister Muldoon soon saw that idle hands created mischief, and various temporary work schemes were put in place.
Yeah, we used to have this Kaha Trust, you know, and you know, I'd answer the phone, ring 737-200 or something, you know, and someone would ring up, hello, you know, is that Mr. Kaha, you know, yeah, do you do interior chimney demolitions? And we'd say, yes, ma'am, certainly do. I'd come around and quote it. And I think it was all very proper. And then we'd turn up the next morning with 5 Black Power or something like that. And they'd just shit, you know, sort of, what's going on here? You're in Karori or something, carting bricks out of their house. And then the lady would make pikelets or something like that, you know, probably to keep recovering from shock or something, do something. And then the boys would say, oh, thanks, Mum, that's the first home cooking I've had, you know, and the old hearts would melt, and the next minute you had a really good relationship going. And we had this one old couple, and we laid concrete, mate, I don't think they could have got another square metre of concrete on their section, you know what I mean? And they were orchid growers as well, and so Muldoon came to visit to see what had been done, the work that we'd done, and I can remember the old fella coming out, and there's this little girl there, and you know, she's been seeing these great gargantuan Black Power guys running past with wheelbarrows and fierce-looking people, and Muldoon says, oh, hello, little girl, and she went, ah! It was awesome, mate. Freaked out completely, eh? It was funny.
The Comba report on gangs reinforced the importance of work, and the Group Employment Liaison Scheme, or GELS, was set up to put at-risk groups in touch with government departments who had the resources to help. Several of the new gang liaison officers came from a similar background to those they were working with, and a new breed of civil servant was born.
Interesting thing, again in my job as the manager of the Group Employment Liaison Service, I encountered, you know, white bikers, so-called white power, who basically said, look, these Maoris have got a monopoly on all these work schemes, you know, that we can't get a bloody thing, we can't get anything. We want to work too, and we want to set up work things too, and we're unemployed too. But, you know, all these North Island Maoris have got the monopoly on it. And when you look at it from their point of view, that's right, you know what I mean? Because the programs have been developed to answer what were then predominantly Māori needs, and there was a bias, there's a natural, intelligent, organisational bias towards that, because that's where the client group were. But as unemployment started to bite, these bikers were becoming unemployed as well. Now, they were people who tended to have trades and engineering type skills. And as the guts dropped out of those secondary industries, they fell into the scrap heap as well. And so they started to experience the same things that Maori kids have been experiencing maybe for a generation.
The Devil's Henchmen and the Road Knights were given over $30,000 each to carry out the renovations. For some of them, it's the first work they've done since the PP schemes were axed. There's been an outcry from politicians and local bodies who think the money and the labour would have been better spent in the community. The gangs are worried the public outcry could jeopardise the first positive steps they're taking to lose the gang tag. And they could be right. Already Employment Minister Annette King is reviewing the allocation. Sally Pearce for the Network News.
The audit reports and all those sorts of things in those schemes showed at the end of the day they were a bloody good deal. Bangs for bucks, they were a good deal. But if you just take this one narrow sort of thing, but the mythology is that all those work schemes and that were a waste of time and all that sort of stuff. Bullshit. You know, look what we got now. We've got one of the most highly imprisoned societies in the world. Who's in the bloody jails? You know? Mainly the young people that those things were aimed at.